Yo, what is up? You have found We Like the Blazers. I am your host, Ryan Woody Whitledge. And as always, I am joined by my co-host, Brandon Goldner. Goldner, what's up? How you doing? I see you're in proper attire today.
I am. I am wearing my CJ McCollum Rip City jersey that I got on sale from the Nike factory store last year. It was like right before, I think it was right before COVID hit, if I'm not mistaken.
You give it 2 to 4 months, you might be able to get that on a bigger discount had you waited.
You're spoiling my joke for later. But yeah, I figure you always come in with the Blazers stuff, and I'm always wearing just like a generic shirt. I was like, I should get dressed up.
I could hand you something from the Sports Hutch.
We have Vladimir the skeleton back there. I mean, that's pretty good, right? And we have a clock. We have a weird looking jade plant, and then of course we have my fern, which needs water. That thing drinks so much water, you have no idea. It's wild.
You know what you actually need back there on that little fireplace mantle? It would be great. Go down to Ball Was Life and pick up a couple of those Blazer candles. You get the Blazer starting 5 candles.
Ball Was Life on Hawthorne, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, they are a great store. I've always wanted to go there. Haven't been there yet. And then one more thing. I am drinking, total segue to something else, but I'm drinking this like vanilla carbonated soda something. And I have to say it's pretty good. So that's my full check-in. You got my Blazers gear, got my plants, got my vanilla soda.
I got my yellow bullet.
You getting pea water there? Good. I'm glad you get pea water.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, how is everything going for you, and what is up in Blazers land / regular land?
Everything's going good for me. Apologies to all of our listeners or watchers. I don't know. My son threw shade at me the other day. He said he felt bad because one of our videos only had 6 views, and so he watched it 7 times.
Shout out to Ryan's son. Yeah, I mean, it takes time to grow stuff. We try to share. If you're not on YouTube and haven't subscribed to We Like the Blazers, do that. What we will never do, Ryan, what we will never do is pay for fake views and fake subscriptions. That's not our style. Not going to do it. So we're relying on y'all to subscribe to us. So go ahead and do that.
That's only because I'm cheap and those prices are exorbitant. But I guess in that vein, I came across a rather interesting Twitter thread the other day, and it was, I can't remember the podcast medium that threw it out there. I think it was like some little off the cuff. I may have found it from like somebody that I follow. They retweeted it or something, but it was talking about them coming up on, they were debating on doing a second season of a podcast that they had launched last year. I want to say it was like a political podcast or something like that. And they were asking people that listen to them, what do they think is more important in a podcast? Having regular and varied guests, let me back this up. It was, what do they listen to? What do they listen to the podcast for? The banter between the hosts and the conversation between the hosts, or because of regular and varied guests? And I know both you and I like talking to people that are in the know and in the business and getting their opinion. But I was curious on your take on it. Like, when you listen to a podcast, do you listen to it primarily for the 2 individuals or 3 individuals or single individual that's hosting it? Or do you listen to them more so because they're able to get, good guests that are, if I want to piggyback this up into our case, like, that are smarter than us?
Yeah, it's, for me personally, it's usually for the people hosting. It's for that familiarity. And even for the shows that I grew up enjoying and appreciating who did have guests, it was often the host was very solid. I'm just thinking of Terry Gross with Fresh Hair. It's like, she would have these incredible guests, but you knew Terry. We all knew Terry. We knew how she operated in the way that she asked questions and stuff. So for me, honestly, it's more about the familiarity and the banter between the hosts than the guests.
Okay. Because I was curious about that. And anybody that's listening, anybody that's watching, we are genuinely curious. So go ahead and hit us up at Like the Blazers on Twitter, or shoot us an email and let us know what you think. Because like on this upcoming season, as the off season's winding down, we've been a little hit and miss with some of our recordings. We got personal stuff going on that we're trying to wrap up before we have to convince our significant others that we're going to sit down for 82 games a year and watch a basketball season.
I was going to say, I feel like we we've done pretty well, all things considered. And yeah, it hasn't been every week, but I mean, there's also not stuff happening every week, right?
Yeah. On that note, nothing next week.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so we're kind of curious, like as we get back into the full swing of things on what you guys want. Like I love talking to guests, but one of my big things that I personally love with guests is I like picking people that are in the basketball world or in the sports reporting world or the Blazers world and talking to them about non-Blazer things. Like if news comes up and whatnot, like I'll hit on it a little bit, but I'm more curious about like how these people interact or like how they go about their job, how they got to where they are, what their lives are like, and making them a little more personal. I like the humanizing aspect of an interview more so than I'm like, hey, I just want to talk to that guy because he's smarter than me.
That's a good point. And I do think now is probably the time, especially for some of these national guests who are usually really busy during the season and frankly are taking a well-deserved rest. But I know there are a couple people who said, hit me up in the off season. And so I should probably hit some of those people up so we can get them in before the season starts anew. But it is, I mean, go for it.
As we both lament about how like, oh no, I like it with the host. We're like, no, let's cram pack all these guests in here in this last month.
That's the thing too. I mean, it should be about, I think a good show, there's a vibe to it, something that you feel that's kind of inherent to the show, and people can bring that to when they do have guests, right? So you're bringing someone into that vibe. I think about All Fantasy Everything, with Ian Carmel and friends, and they'll occasionally have guests, but that vibe is very similar. I mean, hell, Ian met his wife because she was a guest on the show, right? So she obviously was vibing with them, and you really get that sense. And so I'm hoping that you and I, as we build rapport, we keep doing this, we do the same thing, bring people into this bubble, talk about stuff, make fun of ourselves, make fun of other people, and have fun, and get to learn something, hopefully. But
one of the things I really enjoyed back when I was more regularly recording the Blazer Tag podcast, because we're still up in the air on if we're going to actually have a season. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, season 4. This upcoming season. But one of the big things that I did is because in the off season, my two co-hosts were like, yeah, we're not going to try to sit down and, stretch this out and talk about random stuff once a week. That, and a big part of our podcast was doing beer bets and making stupid bets and whatnot. Really hard to bet on shit that doesn't happen the following week when you're talking in the off season. So I kind of took it upon myself and I called it the overtime editions. And I would go out and, that's how I originally met Brandon Sprague, interviewing him, talking to him about how he got into radio and his radio career. AJ McCord, as she was coming up in the industry and whatnot with Coin News 6, sat down and talked to her about like what it was like to be a very knowledgeable woman in a predominantly male run industry and all the stuff that she's done. And now here she is being one of the first-ish. There was another previous, actually on 910 ESPN, female sports reporter in the local market. I can't remember her name, but AJ is currently the only female sports radio host.
Wow,
in the Portland area. And so I talked to her after she got that job too at 1080 about like how that felt. But, just sitting down and talking to people about like their stories and whatnot. It's something that I want to have in the back of my head for like, hey, if there's slow times in the season or whatnot, the other good thing too is like, if you have a generic conversation, it's good to can and hold it for like, if something falls apart and you can't host a podcast that week, it's, hey, I can just, here's an episode of like me talking to this person kind of thing.
Or you can just do what Mike Richmond does and record every single day, which is like, his stamina is unbelievable. And also shout out to Stevie Cozens, who hosts the Baseline podcast. He's also been pumping them out like every day lately. It's just wild to me. I have two more quick thoughts and I'll let you move it along. But one is I'm interested, you're talking about like people in the Blazers media circle, how that circle either expands or changes with Root Sports coming in. I'm quite certain that some of our most familiar names will probably be coming back and some of them won't. And we'll probably get some new ones. So that's interesting. And the other thought I had is just a shout out to Jackie McMullen. I mean, speaking of preeminent women in the media sports world, she's retiring today. She's been doing this for a really long time. And I've always really respected her a ton And so congratulations on an incredible career to Jackie, someone who I've never met, probably won't ever met, but someone who I respect quite a bit. Just wanted to get that in there too.
She had her and Bill Simmons have always had a great relationship, and she's been on his podcast a lot. And I want to say it was about 2 weeks ago. She had a great about like hour and 15-minute conversation with Bill, talking about her experience in the NBA media landscape, everything she's learned, why she decided to walk away, how she knew it was. Yeah.
For those who are just listening, I brought my cat Zora into the frame. If you go, there we go. See, if you go
Scout. It's Scout.
If you go to YouTube, you can see Zora and Scout. That's the bonus you get from subscribing to YouTube. Okay, Zora says that's enough.
But anyway, so no, she had a great piece and just talking about like why it was that she decided to walk away. I also thought that she had a really great story, and spoilers here per se, but ESPN had always bugged her for like, hey, we need to build your brand. We need to get you out there more. Let's get you a Twitter account. You don't have a Twitter account. And she never wanted one. She's like, I don't care about social media. I don't care about pushing my stuff or having a brand in that style. That's not the way I grew up in media.
Right.
And so she'd always just like begrudgingly like say, okay, fine. Yeah, let's do it. And ESPN's like, great, we'll send someone to sit down with you. And she just learned over the years that if she never sent him a follow-up email to like, hey, when is so-and-so going to come sit down with me? ESPN never sent her a follow-up email of, hey, when can we do this? So like for the last like 3-4 years, it's just been this back and forth of like, yeah, we should totally get you on Twitter. And she just goes, okay. And then doesn't say anything and it dies.
I love that. And also that just goes to show how much power and respect she had, which was well earned. Just the fact that she could navigate that way. Props to her. And yeah, shout out to Jackie McMullen.
Okay. So on this little pivot, yes, I agree. Shout out Jackie McMullen. Right. So here's what we got in store for you today. Obviously, since the last time we talked, because we skipped this past Saturday, we all had some stuff going on. The Larry Nance Jr. trade happened. We're going to talk about that first.
Championship, baby. Just kidding.
Not there yet.
I didn't even speak that into the mic and it still peaked. I'm looking at my levels here. It's too loud.
Yeah, no, I got the echo in full force. It's
sorry about that.
I'm not the guy who has to edit this. That's all you.
That is true.
And then as speaking of stealing things that I discovered doing on the Blazer Tag podcast, one of my favorite things to do, and this is where the bulk of the show is going to be, it's called the preseason roster rankings. And this is before you have seen the team play anything in preseason, look at the roster as it stands right now and rank all the players on the roster 1 through, in this case, 13. And justify your reason for them being there. Number 1 is since 2012 has never really been up for debate, but after that things can get a little funky. So we're going to start this off real quick. As I said, Larry Nance Jr. The Trailblazers actually got off their ass and did something, and allegedly they were trying to make a play for Lauri Markkanen, get in on that deal. And when they weren't able to make things work with Chicago as far as making a sign and trade goes, Cleveland came into the mix and was able to facilitate a 3-way trade in which Lauri Markkanen went to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Sorry, Lauri Markkanen. You will be missed.
Blazers legend, Lauri Markkanen.
Yeah. Portland sent off Derek Jones Jr., who had just recently picked up his player option for this coming year, was considered one of our best value trade chips, to the Bulls, and also sent off a future first-round pick and a Cavs future second rounder. Sorry.
Yep.
And that brought Portland in Larry Nance Jr. So when you saw this news, you joked about it already, but you started double planning the parade route, just verifying reservations. It's still going past El Gaucho, right?
I was contacting the Portland Bureau of Transportation for a permit down Broadway to make sure that this triple parade would happen. But before I get into the Nance stuff, I want to ask a pre-question to this trade. And you'd mentioned it, that the available reporting suggests the Blazers were trying to get Lauri Markkanen. Would you have preferred that to getting Nance? I just think it's interesting to ask that question.
do not know. I got a couple texts from friends, a couple texts from people or a couple of DMs from people that listen to this podcast and whatnot, asking me how I felt about that and would I have rather had Lauri Markkanen. I don't know enough about Lauri Markkanen. I'm sorry. I didn't watch the Bulls that much. I know that he was amongst, the online media circus and reporters and all that kind of stuff. He was considered a good get. That's all I got to base it off of. So, I mean, this is coin flip kind of stuff. I know a lot more about Larry Nance Jr. than I do about him. So I literally do not have an opinion on if I would have preferred one or the other on that.
Well, let me tee it up this way really quick, because they're two very different players. Lauri Markkanen is 23, Nance is 28. So there's an age difference. The biggest thing we're going to talk more about Nance in a second. Nance is more versatile. Lauri Markkanen is basically like a 7-foot shooter at his best. That's what he is, right? He's a career 36% 3-point shooter, but he shot 40% last year.
So a better Myers Leonard.
Yeah, basically a better Myers Leonard. Yes. And he, a couple of years ago, people were thinking, wow, this guy's really on the come up. He's going to be a star. And it just hasn't broken that way for him. So let me put it to you this way. For this Blazers team, for me, it all revolves around keeping Damian Lillard happy, right? Mm-hmm. So for this Blazers team, whether they make a CJ trade or not, would you rather have like a giant 3-point shooting power forward who can't do much else? Or would you rather have a Swiss Army knife power forward who is versatile defensively, can't shoot as well, but is a better playmaker, and just a more all around more versatile player? Which of those two archetypes would you prefer for this Blazers team?
So rewind back many podcast episodes when we were still thinking the Bucks were going to flame out and Mike Budenholzer was going to get fired.
Yeah, that's right.
And we were talking about the possibility of CJ for Chris Middleton or Tobias Harris or any of that stuff. And what was the thing that I was saying the most back then? I don't care who it is, as long as it provides balance for the team. Okay. So in this case, if you're going to talk about somebody with a limited specialty versus somebody who can he's not great at anything, but he's good at everything, I'm going to lean more on the good at everything part.
That's totally fair.
I feel as though, this is not one of those trades. And I feel as though a lot of Blazers fans and even some media to that degree have been in this, it's boom or bust, which I agree that when Damian Lillard, your star player, is saying, I need a championship caliber roster, that everyone's going to expect, like, why are they not moving heaven and earth to get an all-star, to get a James Harden level player, one of those top tier players? Why are they not doing that? But this Larry Nance move to me strikes me as that it perfectly fits the roster. It fills needs. They needed more bigs. Larry Nance can play a small ball 5, and he has a lot of decent skills, and he's been progressing his game. He hasn't necessarily been the world's best 3-point shooter over the course of his career, but if you look at his years lined up, he's been increasing that skill and moving his game out farther away from the basket. Yep. Same point in time, he's a great passer, absolutely great passer. High basketball IQ, great court vision, is fantastic in the pick and roll. So especially if you want to go to a small ball 5 kind of thing and put him and Dame, or even if you want to run a horn set with him and Nurk and Dame on the court, this gives you a lot of options. It's almost kind of leads into like with stuff that we were talking about with the Ben Simmons and how he would fit and what we kind of saw with that stuff. But he's just an overall great like mesh glue guy. And I feel as though that he fits great into this roster. My dream would be that somebody could realize that either CJ or Norm could just easily be handed 6th man of the year and insert Larry Nance Jr. into the starting lineup, balance it out a little more. Yeah, you do kind of force Robert Covington slightly out of his now natural quote unquote position at the 4, moving him up to the 3, but still Larry Nance Jr. coming off the bench, playing with whatever staggered minutes Dame and CJ is going to do. It's going to be a great fit. And I maintain, I don't necessarily need to see swing for the fences moves. I would like them. There are still improvements that can be made to this roster. I do not believe it is a championship caliber team. The team got better with this trade and the roster got more balanced. That's how I feel.
That is really well put. I agree with everything you said, and the podcast is now over. Thank you. If you want to reach out to us, no.
All right, let's.
That's it. So first of all, I agree with you. I would rather have Nance than Markkanen. Markkanen probably has more upside. Maybe he can turn the player that people thought he was going to be when he was a little bit younger, but I don't see that. Yes, Nance fits the Blazers better now, and so I won't rehash everything you just said because I agree with all of it. Two things to put a finer point on. One, we're talking about someone who is, you mentioned his passing. He's not just a good passer. He's an elite passer. He's like 90 plus percentile passer at his position. That means when you have people trapping Damian Lillard, you have someone going up, setting the screen or getting the ball, being able to pass out of that. That's Nance. He can do that. Nurk can do that a little bit for sure, but Nance has better passing vision and better skill. He's a better passer. That is going to be really huge for this Blazers team, I think. So that's number one. And then the other thing, I want to get your take on this. If we think about the possibility, and perhaps we'll talk about it more later in the podcast, but we think about the possibility of the Blazers making a bigger trade. I think that Nance fits this team with more permutations post-trade than a Lauri Markkanen would have. And so Nance, you can really plug in many different ways. I'm also So I want to get your take on that, but then one more quick thing. I wonder, Nance has played on nothing but crappy teams his entire career. Is it possible that he is even more of a value add on a good team than he has been being relegated into the dustbin over in Cleveland? Is that, well, actually he played 1 year with LeBron, didn't he? Okay, fine.
Yeah. He had 1 year with LeBron, but that was like LeBron's swan song in Cleveland before he went to LA. So
fair enough. And he was like 10 years old at that point. So I had it up here and then I closed it. He was,
if LeBron can make Ildrinas Ilgauskas look like an all-star center, then
right. Yeah, no, exactly. So yeah, I mean, what do you think about that? What do you think about that Nance is a good player to have if the Blazers were to make a CJ trade and he can plug in different ways so that he can kind of mold around whatever the team could look like? I mean, do you buy that argument?
Well, there's been rumors, and people have talked about it. I know Danny Meringue on the Jack Ramsey's, his new podcast, has kind of spoken about like that. He could see Yusuf Nurkic being one of the Blazers' biggest trade chips in this upcoming trade deadline time, when that kind of stuff happens. And at that point, Cody Zeller has a legit injury history. I'll touch on Nance's injury history here in a smidge, but if Cody Zeller suddenly moves up to your starting five and now you're suddenly lacking at a backup five, Nance is somebody who could be in, as I spoke about, like a small ball five lineup and play that bigger position. He's got a big body. One of the weird things, I think there's only about like a 10-pound difference between him and Nurk. For as much as that size difference is, I swear to God, you look at two pictures of them side by side, you're going to go, oh, Nurk would absolutely destroy him. No, there's only about a 10-pound difference. So no. And so to basically answer your question, Nance is the kind of guy that fills enough spots with little things he can do here or there that he opens you up to different possibilities. Yes, as you were talking about, you're not limited like if you had a Lauri Markkanen where you're like, okay, but he's got this tall white guy who's good at shooting. Right. Can't play a liga defense, can't do this, can't set screens, yada, yada, yada. Okay, well, that's going to, maybe how's that going to affect roster construction? So Nance is a lot better at this. The one thing that people have been picking on with Nance per se is that he has an injury history. He's never played, I believe, more than 65 games in a season. But
67. How dare you?
67.
Give him the credit for those 2 games.
Do you have that stat in front of you? Because I was literally pulling that out of my ass. If I was that close, okay. I'm calling that a win on my part. That
is within a couple of percentage points. So good job.
Yeah, that's within a Nate Silver poll.
Oh man, Nate. By the way, Nate Silver has to stop talking about things he doesn't know about. Anyway, continue, please.
Again, speaking about being good at certain things and not great, but anyways. So with Larry Nance Jr., one of the little known things about him, actually, at least in this market, it was well known in Cleveland. He was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And so a big thing for him when he was growing up and whatnot, he was suffering from, all the things that come with it. You're going with painful cramping, weight loss, fatigue, especially as you're going through puberty and growing up, it awkward muscle growth and whatnot. But finally, when he was diagnosed with that, they put him on a series of medications. And there was literally a summer where he went from like being, like 6 foot to like 6'7". And a lot of NBA players, and a lot of NBA players like do experience those kind of like growth spurts and whatnot, where they bulk up a couple inches, but like 7-8 inches, and especially with dealing with that kind of stuff, that throws your body through a weird phase. And so like a lot of the injuries that he's had outside of like the freak thumb injury that he had last year can all kind of be tied back to his to Crohn's disease. And so it's not necessarily that he's injury prone as much as that he has a condition that needs managed and looked after. And if there's anything that we've gone from the era, back with Brandon Roy and Greg Oden, where we couldn't trust the Blazers training staff or health staff as far as we could freaking throw them, to having this staff now where they are very progressive in how they treat their medicine and their preventative care and all that stuff. And so
I heard that they vacuum seal Damian Lillard after every game and then put him in a hot sous vide bath for 2 hours before removing him.
And then what? They take him out and like gently pull him apart with forks and put him on a bun. Cause I was going to say, that sounds like a pulled pork recipe to me.
I have sous vide on the brain because we did a sous vide fish last night. It was absolutely perfect. If you don't know what this is, you get this device that heats the water, right? You put it in a bag and it cooks it slowly, but just unbelievable. It's so good. Anyway, yeah. Now I'm just thinking, it's like that episode of Seinfeld.
Stop cooking our players.
It's like that episode of Seinfeld, though, where Kramer is so hungry that he like looks at Newman and Newman looks like a turkey. And it's I don't know. If you're a Seinfeld fan, if you don't, how dare you? Anyway, continue.
Well,
sorry about that.
That's also going to massively age our audience. So I'm sorry for anybody 20 and younger.
Come on. No, hey, I started watching Seinfeld when I was like 20 years old. It was like, I remember.
Are you serious? I watched it live with my mom.
Really? My brother used to like it. It was a little over my head at the time it was actually airing. Cause it was really popular, like 94 to 98. And that's, I was like, in between 10 and 14, I was just a little bit over my head at that point. I watched it when I'd grown up a little bit. Anyway, check out Seinfeld.
No. I'm going side tangent here because now I'm kind of curious.
Let's do it.
So I was only child, single mom, but my mom always wanted me to know what was going on with the world. And so like my daily routine from the time I was in like first or second grade on was I would get up in the morning. I would go out to the kitchen. My mom was sitting at the kitchen table with her coffee, little corner TV up in the, up in the kitchen or whatnot. And we'd sit down and we would watch the news. And there'd be a break between like when the local news ended and when the Today Show started. And she would look at me and literally ask my opinion on like, hey, so what do you think about that, city ordinance that they're thinking of doing or whatnot? And she wanted to get my opinions on it. One of my most vivid memories, as far as like news stuff goes, when I was a kid, was watching the O.J. Simpson trial with my mom. And when they would cut the coverage off, we wouldn't listen to the news pundits. We would immediately turn the TV off and sit down and talk about how we thought the testimony went that we just watched.
Wow. That's a deep cut. That's actually pretty smart. Cause like, it reminds me of like, if something big in the NBA happens, to like formulate your own thoughts about it first, like talk to their buddies about it before you listen to all like the podcasts and stuff. Like I kind of like that. Props to your mom. Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
So that's the kind of stuff I was raised on, but she always wanted to keep me in the know and in pop culture. And so like, I watched Seinfeld live. I watched, everything from Friends live and whatnot. As I got older, it was, when Lost came out or Fringe, like it up until when she passed away, like after I moved out of the house, it was always like shows that I knew that we shared. That would be my first phone call, or she would call me after she watched an episode, and we would take like an hour and a half to like discuss what it meant. And especially dealing with like shows like Lost and Fringe and stuff like that I'm talking about. Like those tend to be kind of somewhat deep shows and whatnot. So that what you had said about that just got me curious on that whole thing, because I didn't find that stuff out later. I already knew of that stuff.
I like that we went from the Blazers health and training staff to this conversation. See where we can go when we're just free flowing, just kind of bippity boppity on the show. That's how we do it here.
Anyways, I'm boiling this down to I like the Blazers health and training staff. They're going to get 2 thumbs up. I'm not going to pull a Mets. I'm not going to give them 2 thumbs down.
Not baseball like cut. One of each. What about like a Siskel and Ebert type of thing?
That was a current deep baseball cut for all the MLB fans who listen in.
Oh yeah, the guy who the fans are booing him, and so he's thumbs downing them, and then the owner's like, "Don't thumbs down the fans. They're passionate." Like, yeah,
that's not one guy. That's the entire team. Is
no, the entire team
down? Yeah,
this is like another example of players not being treated less than human. I think,
if fans get to boo players, players get to boo fans.
Yes,
that's as far as I go.
That seems, I mean, that's what I think too. Owners pandering to the fans, whatever. I get it. They cut his checks. It's fine.
Oh, you're the crappy team in the New York baseball market. So it is what it is. And, you can say that they cut their checks, but they also got all their money stolen from
flipping the fans off. It's a thumbs down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not like he's not even going like that. I mean, it's a thumbs down. Like, who cares? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to lighten up.
I maintain if I ever go to a game and boo a player intentionally, and I'm close enough for him to hear it, and he turns around and boos me, or for lack of a better term, tells me to just go fuck off. Right. I earned it. And that's within his right. Because if anybody boos me at my job in my real life, I'm probably going to fucking throw something at him.
It's also like that Seinfeld episode where George's girlfriend, I think it was, starts booing Jerry. And Jerry's like, what the hell was that? Why was she booing me? And then then Jerry goes to her work and starts booing her at work. Yep. And she bursts out of the office crying. He's like, you don't like it, do you? Like, you'd be lucky if you booed CJ McCollum, who's like one of the snappier players, I think. I mean, he's a super nice guy, but he's got teeth. If the worst that you got from CJ was a thumbs down, I consider you yourself lucky. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Anyway,
he's considered one of the worst trash talkers in the league. Like, we never see him say a damn thing, but apparently everybody in the league is like, dude, don't fucking backtalk him.
Little known fact about CJ McCollum, he's a ventriloquist, and that's why he talks shit and you don't see his lips move at all. It's unbelievable. It's just unreal.
Is it weird that we're in the point in the off season where I have to actually ask if that's a real fact or if you just made that up?
I made it up. But
okay. All right.
Okay. You were talking about Nance injury history, the Blazers training staff, and you trust them.
Anyways. Yes. And so I'm very much on board with the Nance trade. I'm not going to freak out and go over the moon. I've seen a lot of people do that. Like I said, this is a trade that brought in a balanced player, and especially when you're going to compare it with Derek Jones Jr., who went out, and we were even questioning, was he going to see the court and get any playing time? You're going to bring in Nance, who's obviously going to get playing time and obviously has way more marketed skills than Derek Jones Jr. I'm on board with this. The one little thing that people keep freaking out about, the first round pick, fuck the first round picks. Your goal is to keep Damian Lillard.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to ask if you cared about that.
No, I don't, because people are like, oh, well, we gave up, I understand.
It's a lottery protected first round pick from now until the end of time.
Exactly. So, and here's how I feel about all first round picks right now. Like, yes, you could throw a first round pick in. CJ in a first round pick is going to get you a better player than just CJ. But again, I crave balance. I don't just crave name brand recognition with my Trailblazers roster. I want a guy who fits. Larry Nance fits. If it costs a first round pick to get involved in this trade, I am perfectly fine with that. If it's not good enough to keep Damian Lillard, you're going to get all the fucking first round picks and pick swaps that you've ever dreamed of.
Right.
Because you're probably going to trade Dame. You're probably going to trade CJ. Nurk is probably out the door. In 2 years, then maybe Norman Powell. Sounds to me like you got about 37 first round picks coming back. I don't care about the last 3 then.
Yeah, I agree. And also, if they wanted to facilitate a trade in the meantime to bolster the roster with Dame, there are 2 things they could do. One, they could negotiate to get the protections modified or removed on that pick. Generally, the team will pay money. They can mess with the protections on that. The second thing, I put this question out to Twitter and I did not get an affirmative answer. If you have a first round pick that's lottery protected, could you have a reverse protected pick to say that this pick is, you only get it if it hits in the lottery, Therefore, in the same year, you could have a first round pick that's either lottery protected that would otherwise go to you or to another team, say, only if it's in the lottery do you get it. Is that something you can do? I don't know. That might run into Stepien rule stuff. I don't know.
I DM or quote tweet Larry Kuhn on that. I think the closest you can get is putting the world's most minuscule amount of like protections on that. I don't know.
Well, the point.
By the way,
yeah, go. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go.
Oh,
you go.
Well, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I was just going to say, so neither of us care about the first round pick, but I wanted to talk about one more permutation of the Blazers lineups with Nance. So I don't know where you wanted to go, but that's where I wanted to go. So let me know if you want to put your point first or if you want to hit my question first.
I think we'll touch on your question in my fun preseason roster rankings game.
Okay.
So I want to end the Larry Nance conversation real quick here. This immediate version of it with this. True or false? This tweet was written by Neil O'Shea. As the Blazers work to become a better defensive team under new coach Chauncey Billups, Nance's elite defensive impact makes him an ideal fit for Portland. Is that the email that was sent to Woj and he just copy and pasted, or do you think that there was some editorial leeway allowed?
I think O'Shea Snapchatted Woj those exact words with some heart emoji and kissy emoji. Thank you, Woj. Like that literally, I mean, Nance is a good defender. He is a good defender. He's one of the better deflection defenders in the league. You know who's slightly better than him? Covington. Now Blazers have two forwards who are really good at deflections, but he's not an elite defender. There's a reason why you've never heard his conversation in defensive player of the year conversations.
The Blazers still do not have a great one-on-one man defender.
One-on-one. Yeah. He's the same as Covington where they're really good roaming off ball, being disruptive, which I'd be interested to see how Billups is going to change their defense. We've heard a lot of talk, right? Like there's been no opportunity thus far for him to demonstrate how he's actually going to coach this team with defense, but we know it's something that he cares about. So I will be interested in that, but you're right. He's not the best one-on-one defender. So yeah, that tweet from Woj, quite literally straight from Neil O'Shea's moisturized California mouth. No doubt about that.
All right. So we're going to take a break here real quick. And when we come back, we're going to get into my, I hope, super fun first iteration of the We Like the Blazers preseason roster rankings. We'll be right back. All right, guys, so we're back. And so this is, as I said at the top of the show, that something I'm stealing from my other podcast, the Blazer Tag podcast, of the preseason roster rankings. I've yet to do this with the guys because we're not going to record until early October because we're all enjoying summer break over there. But I really wanted to do this with you. You originally wanted to do a, grade the off season, grade the acquisitions, give the A+ for this, the C- for that, the fail for this.
That stuff gets engaged. People love being pissed off about it. It's great.
And it's also the most unoriginal shit ever. Every sports medium does it. Everybody does it. Every podcast does it. I disdain it with a passion. If you want my grade, Blazers, C. You did the bare minimum.
The secret to that, it's always about them explaining the process to get to the grade that I find most interesting. Having said that, you're not wrong. And, that just shows you which one of us is more original than the other. And that's fine. I will concede that.
On that note, if you're going to explain the reasoning for the process, I find it a lot more fun to just in one foul swoop go down the roster, spots one throughout the point. Now, two ways don't count. In this game, two ways do not count. Get rid of any two-way contracts. I think the Blazers have one, and that is Trendon Waterford. Trendon Waterford.
Oh, I'm looking.
The only current updated one is Basketball Real GM.
Yeah, Nate Duncan has not updated the Blazers. He doesn't even, whatever. Anyway, so fair enough.
Took me a smidge. But yes, two ways don't count.
They're not on my list anyway. You said you went 13 deep.
Yep, I went 13 deep.
There are a couple. We'll figure this out at the end, but I think I followed the directions.
Yes. And so it is, you start off with number one, who is the most important player on the team, and you end with guy that I just want to be really good at waving a towel, a la Zach Collins last year.
Okay.
Or Myers Leonard in years past.
Wow.
So
the Myers Leonard honorable least important player spot.
Yes. And so in this regard, normally on Blazer Tag, when we do this, we since 2012 have just counted it down and said, all right, number 1, 2, 3, and then say his name, because that player has not changed since 2012. So Brandon, would you like me to count it down and we can say that player's name?
Let's do it
in unison. All right. 1, 2, 3.
CJ McCollum.
I swear to God, there's one person who does it every year. One. Normally that's my deal. Normally it's my deal. And by the way, I don't go CJ. I pick end of the bench guy. I'm like,
I know, but that's at
when
least
he was on the team, I said Mario Hezonja for number 1.
You may, I mean, it's not, I was thinking like maybe someone would think it was plausible for a half second. I thought that it's obviously Dame.
Yeah, yes, Dame. No reason being given. He is the face of the franchise. He is, if not already, on his way to being one of the greatest trailblazer in franchise history.
Yeah,
obviously, Damian Lillard. No explanation needed. Now, I will let you kick off the start of every number. So for number 2, who is your second most important person on the Trailblazers roster this upcoming year?
Dun, 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 dun. With the second pick of the Portland Trailblazers' most important on their team draft, Brandon Golder selects CJ McCollum out of Lehigh University.
All right. So number 2, is there any reason outside of what could obviously be that he's Dame's backcourt running mate? You know, what's your justification for his spot here?
Oh, because he's the second most talented player by far. He's an elite scorer. He's got elite handles, incredible shot making ability. He's a great 3-point shooter. He bends the defense in ways that make it easier for Dame to do what he needs to do. Yes, he has deficiencies on defense. Those have been well documented, and maybe he's not the best fit besides Damian Lillard, but pound for pound, talent for talent, CJ McCollum is very clearly the second best player on this team. There was a moment in time where that may have been in question, but that moment has since passed. Maybe we'll see that come into play again at some point, but I doubt it. So for me, it's CJ McCollum, and it's right now where we stand, it's not particularly close.
Great. I love this. Didn't take us far to get any deviation.
Right.
For me, my number 2 is, and by the way, you can just consider this like the Mel Kiper breakdown. So okay. Like you have the draft pick and then you give the Mel Kiper, you're going to go deep dive into the tape. But for me, my number 2 most important player, hands down, and you got the title wrong, but I'll give it to you. The preseason roster rankings is one Mr. Yusuf Nurkic.
Okay. Wow. I'm disgusted with you. I'm disappointed.
He has been a pivot point on this team for a while. And as he goes, the team goes. History has shown us that as long as he's on the court, the Blazers have a significantly better defense. They are allowed to do a lot more in the offense with his passing and with his pick and roll game with Damian Lillard. He is one of Damian Lillard's best friends on the team. And even if you want to go just a little farther down, he is probably going to be one of the Blazers' most attractive trade chips, if they so happen to go that route, come the trade deadline. He is obviously a represented by Clutch Sports. Clutch likes to keep their clients happy. Yusuf Nurkic is kind of somewhat a high-profile Blazer. I think that him being included in a trade could work to net the Blazers back a player of consequence as they're making a playoff push. But as far as him being on the team, he is right now and has been the anchor of the defense. And as long as he is healthy, the team has shown that they can be successful.
I do want to note one interesting thing here with Nurkic's contract. He's on the books next year for $12.8 million. Then one more year, the following year, he then has a $12 million non-guarantee. What's interesting about that is that his contract, I suppose, could work either as a value contract that another team gets his services for 2-ish years, or he can serve as an expiring contract for another team. So the versatility contractually with him is an interesting point. Yeah. I think he's is one of the best values at center in the league. I also think that the way that he is okay. What I said earlier about CJ McCollum, that there's been a time that maybe he wasn't the Blazers' second most important player. That's because Nurkic was for a time. I don't think that he is right now. His impact in the Denver series was completely undeniable, though. I will say that, like, it was so clear that if Nurkic could just stay on the court, they would have won the series. Probably would have picked up maybe a couple of those games. I mean, history we'd be in a much different place if he had just stayed on the court. But guess what? He didn't stay on the court. That's part of who he is, man. Like, he's not as reliable. He's not as reliable from a minutes per game standpoint. He's not as reliable from an attitude standpoint, not to mention the potential injury risk. So, well,
you look at it, Blazers have better defenders around him. They can have better defenders that they could put in the game than were maybe at their disposal with last year's roster and Cantor.
We haven't seen that, though.
You know, it's, again, I think you're right. But the potential is there, and we're talking about this upcoming season. So there you go.
Wait, I love what you just said. The potential is there because Nurkic at his press conference to end the season was clearly pissed. He was clearly pissed off. He was basically saying, I don't even know if I want to come back here. He's very stoked about the Billups hire. Chauncey Billups has gone out of his way to be like, we're going to feature Jusuf Nurkic more in the offense. Chauncey Billups has also said he's gone out of his way to say how much they're going to focus on defense. And yes, part of the reason why Nurkic couldn't stay on the floor is because he was being asked to do way too much defensively. So
everything was funneled to him, and he was the man on an island.
And Billups is saying that is not the way it's going to be anymore. But all of this, Ryan, is hypothetical. It's talk. We have not seen it in practice. So
by the way, you know what the cutest hypothetical is that everybody keeps talking about.
Is that you agree with me finally about something? That would be very cute.
No, that's not going to happen. It's like people are talking about, like, obviously they're going to still stagger Dame and CJ, and one of them is going to be running the point. We don't need a backup point. We have zero fucking clue.
We have no idea. We have no idea.
9 years of Stotts doing that. You assume the base principle is that you want one of your best players on the floor at all times. So sure, they probably will stagger in some way, shape, or form.
But we don't know.
But you don't know.
So here's what I'll grant you. I will say, if you are, I'm trying to give you credit here, but I just look, what you're describing hasn't happened yet. That's the problem with this. Is like, yes, like, I wouldn't be shocked if it so happened all the stars aligned, the Blazers defense and the offense has changed, and Jusuf Nurkic finally hits that maturity switch, flips for him. His passing goes up another level. His outside shooting goes up another level. And now all of a sudden, Jusuf Nurkic is like a borderline all-star. Like, that would be awesome. I don't expect that to happen, but it totally could.
Consider this. His after next year, it's not guaranteed.
Correct.
This is a pseudo contract year. How do we see players perform in contract years normally?
Pretty well, but I will say this, his contract is such a value. He would have to play very poorly if the Blazers didn't trade him for them to not pick up this option. I mean, he's young enough still.
That's true.
But he'll be motivated. Okay. So all of this is to say that you're wrong, first of all. Second of all, maybe you'll end up being right. I think the most likely scenario is that he's not the Blazers' second most important player. But what you've described is a great fan fiction for if it were to happen, that is what it would look like. So I'll give you that.
Stay tuned for my Twilight fan fiction coming out soon.
I cannot wait.
All right. So now, I love that this much debate has happened in the first two. So with the number 3, Brandon, who is your number 3 in the preseason roster rankings for the Portland Trail Blazers?
Now, see, you didn't even give me the opportunity because I changed my notes to reflect the proper phrasing, which you've given us, which is the preseason roster rankings.
Go ahead.
With the number 3 pick in the Blazers preseason roster rankings, I select Jusuf Nurkic for all of the reasons you described. But in my view, CJ McCollum is more important for all the reasons I described. So all right. I'm assuming that we just have those two flipped.
You would assume wrong, Bob.
What are you doing? Okay, you're trolling it. You're trolling.
I am not trolling you. I am not trolling you. I am not.
This is absolute hot take Stephen A. Smith madness from you. You have absolutely
no.
Yes.
No. My number 3 for the Trailblazers preseason roster rankings is one Mr. holding his same spot from last year, Robert Covington.
You're such a troll. Whatever.
I am not a troll. When the Blazers started off and Robert Covington was not entirely sure of himself in the offense or his role, that played into a big part of their early season struggles last year. And at the tail end of the year, you saw him coming on a lot more, and a lot more team success happened because he's a great help defender. He's a great team defender. He's not a good individual defender. And so a big part of where I see him contributing this year is that he knows the deficiencies, for lack of a better term, of his teammates. He knows where he should better help out. He knows where his outlets on offense are going to come from. You can shake your head at me all you want, and we can disagree until the cows come home. But Robert Covington is the third most important player on the Trailblazers roster.
No, he isn't.
This year. Yes.
No, he's not. Listen, Skip Bayless. Robert Covington is a perfectly fine player. He's a perfectly fine role player.
He is he is a fantastic fucking role player.
If he was the Blazers' third most important player, then why didn't the Blazers do better last year? I can't. I don't understand.
Because I don't understand why with the truncated offseason and the lack of a training camp and the limited practices that they were able to have. It only
affected him. It didn't affect anyone else in the league.
It affected the entire damn team, but it took him a long time to figure out his role and where he was best suited to help the team.
Just because he got better doesn't mean he's the third best player on the team.
All right, fine. We're not going to agree on it.
Well, hold on. No, I'm not done yet because.
And by the way, I am tracking your rankings and my rankings because how I like to end the season is looking back on our lists and figuring out how wrong we were.
There's no universe in which Robert Covington. If Robert Covington, okay, if Robert Covington is the Blazers' third most important player next year, it's going to be a bad year. Whether Dame is traded,
nonsense,
or whether people are injured, there is no universe in which he's the third most important player. And it's funny because, the player that I thought the Blazers were trading for when they gave up 2 first-round picks to Houston to get him in the first place, he started becoming that player later in the year. And there's no question about that. And that was
once
awesome.
He gelled.
That was awesome to see.
That's his starting point. That's his launching pad from this year.
And that was so
if he
good.
Can improve, I expect more from him this year and a bigger contribution and to be more important to the team.
Okay. You're trolling. Got Skip.
I am not trolling. I am not trolling. Just
Stephen
wait.
A. Smith over there. Whatever. Okay. All right. So
Brandon,
we'll see.
Number 4 goes to you.
I need to ask a rules clarification of the judge, which is you on number 4. I have a 4A and a 4B.
Not allowed. That sounds like a 4 and a 5 to me.
Okay. Well, I will say then my 4 and 5 I have on my list is 4A and 4B, which shows to people that I think that they're very close in their potential impact for next year. But I will say my 4th pick of the Blazers preseason roster rankings is Norm Powell. And there's a reason why the Blazers paid him.
We agree.
Oh, finally. Yay.
We finally got one.
But that means then what are you doing? I'm wearing a CJ McCollum jersey right now. Look at how upset you're making me. Where is it just on this list? What is happening right now? This is so stupid.
No, it's not. And I have a justification for it. Anyways.
No, you don't.
I'm sure.
What are you talking about?
Enlighten the world as to why we both think that Norman Powell is the 4th most important player. Because I guarantee
McCollum on this
we'll get to it. Don't spoil my list. We'll get to it when we get to it.
So dumb. Let me fix my hair. That is, okay. It is so hard for me to get over what's happening right now.
Don't you see why this is such a fun exercise?
Jackie McMullen is so disappointed in you right now. The most this is so dumb. Okay.
Hey, I'm trying, Jennifer.
Norman Powell He is very important for this Blazers lineup. He is a versatile defender, if maybe a little bit undersized for where he's going to be starting at the 3. He is one of the best corner 3-point shooters in the league. He also is good on the break and transition. I'd be interested to see if Chauncey Billups gets the Blazers running more, especially now that they have Nance. It's possible. That would be nice. He can do a little bit of ball handling. So he's an important player for this team because of what he brings on both offense and defense, and he's versatile. He can plug in different ways. And again, that's why, in order for the Blazers to have any chance at all at re-signing Damian Lillard, they really needed to sign him. Credit to Noel Shea, he was able to do it. That's great.
No, not credit. You don't get credit for doing the bare minimum of what your job was.
No, it's credit. It's credit.
You showed up to school.
It's credit. You get credit. You get some credit from me. He's also on a relatively not a value contract. He is properly paid for his position, and the Blazers control him through the rest of his prime, which is great. There are other players who are not as good as him who have been who are being paid more. So potentially, if the Blazers needed to pull off some kind of a weird trade, could be included in that too. So he's important for that reason as well. So that's what I'm going with.
All right. We agree on Norman Powell. So this means, and you gave all good, valid reasons. So this means you now get to kick off number 5. So Brandon, with your number 5.
I'm just afraid. I feel like
this game is great. I love this game.
I'm having a really hard time focusing because there's a name missing from this list, and his name is CJ McCollum, and I'm disappointed in you, and so is he. So my 4B.
Yeah, but I'm right. You mean your 5?
We're gonna put this on Twitter, and you're gonna get shredded.
That's fine. I don't have to respond to the trolls like you do. It's cool.
That's true. I do have a problem with responding to people way too much. My 4B, or by your rules, my number 5 for the preseason roster rankings, maybe a little bit controversial, but I'm sliding in Larry Nance Jr.
I love how you say slightly controversial after you've given me crap for having like 3 controversial takes so far.
Your first controversial take, whatever. Yes, I think this is slightly controversial because Robert Covington, I have then below him, and I know, whatever. I mean, it's not a spoiler because I haven't said his name. Larry Nance, again, versatile defender. Not
a member of the starting 5, but makes it into your top 5.
But here's my question, though, about him, because we've talked about Larry Nance already a little bit and what he brings and what he doesn't bring. My question that I was going to ask you earlier that you said to table for this part of the discussion, so I'll float it now.
All right.
Do you think that do you think the Blazers are going to bust out a big ball lineup
you're going your Mike Richmond lockdown Blazers question. I saw that earlier.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. I did say that. Where you have Nurkic and Nance and Covington, and then, either Dame and CJ, or maybe if you want more defense, Dame and Norm. But can Nurkic and Nance and Covington, can they realistically coexist? And where I want to ask this question, the way I want to frame it is against a contending team in the playoffs, because all that matters to Damian Lillard is playoff success at this point. And the Blazers' best lineups, is there some advantage that the Blazers could have in the playoffs against the Lakers, in the playoffs against the Bucks or the Nets? Is there some discernible advantage? I have not thought through that enough. It's kind of a complicated question. So if you're not comfortable answering it right this second, I totally understand.
It's fine. It's traditional basketball. You have traditional players. You're not playing players in their new age roles. So like if you have Dame, Norm, Rocco at the 3, who he's capable of, and he's a great help defender. He's not a good lockdown defender or lockdown man defender, but and he's capable as an outlet pass. Nance Jr. playing your spot at the 4, who's a good pivot point, a great pick and roll person. Pairing him with Nurk, who I mentioned earlier, like running them out there in like a horn set or whatnot. Yeah, that's completely doable. And especially in the playoffs when you go for kind of more of a deep. That would be the Blazers, I would say, best defensive first lineup, where you're not necessarily sacrificing a whole lot of offense. You have players who can create, you have players who can score, you have players who can pass out and find the open man. And Dame is not left alone on an island in that lineup. So yeah, it's completely doable. And I think it's completely a totally successful. obviously matchups depending, but 9 times out of 10, a successful lineup in the playoffs.
Well, let me take one example really quick, and I don't mean to spend too much time on this, but let's just look at the Bucks lineup that they're rolling with. So they lost. Why does he not appear on this list?
PJ Tucker.
They lost PJ Tucker, but they're going to be rolling with Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Brooke Lopez, and is Bobby Portis going back? Is he
Portis re-signed? Yes.
So is that their starting 5, or is it Dante DiVincenzo starting?
There you go.
So how can the Blazers with Nurk and Covington and Nance, who's guarding who? And where do the Blazers find their advantage?
Nance is guarding Nurkic, and I think Covington is guarding Lillard. So,
wow. Okay, no, that's not what I'm talking about.
Because I heard Blazers are playing the Bucks.
Yes. Because I heard, for example, that like if they were to play the Lakers, that maybe Nance would be tasked with guarding.
The Lakers will be dead and in a freaking old folks' home by the playoffs. That team is so freaking geriatric. If the Blazers and
the Bucks, the small city rival finals that everyone's clamoring for from coast to coast, if that somehow miraculously happens, and you have Nurkic and Nance and Covington, my point is like, who's guarding who? I guess you put Nance.
That's Nurk on Lopez. You got Nance on Antetokounmpo.
That's actually an easy one. Two very traditional centers in some respects.
Yeah, Nance on Antetokounmpo because Nance is your most mobile defender. You know,
Covington on
has him in size, but you know, as I stated earlier, Nance is a bigger-bodied individual, and so he can, you know, somewhat-ish handle, you know, Antetokounmpo on the post, but your hope is that Antetokounmpo is going to be wanting to run around the perimeter and all that kind of stuff. And then, yes, Covington on Middleton, and Norm is going to be on whoever their best outlet shooter is, and then Dame is going to be guarding whoever their weakest offensive player is.
It looks like Holiday and DiVincenzo are pretty similar outside shooters. So
I'd say Dame on DiVincenzo and Norm on Holiday. It's probably
so CJ's not even in the lineup.
But I mean, over the past couple of years in a closing defensive lineup, like, are you trying to get a last minute possession stop of who's guarding who? Because if you're trying to outscore, I would go with a completely different lineup. Nance would still be involved, but
I'm thinking more of like, when I think of like closing lineups, I'm thinking like last 6 minutes of a close game.
You have so many in and out substitutions, defense, offense. It's kind of, you know, it's pick your poison. Are you talking about a defensive stop, or are you talking about you need a bucket?
Well, I'm saying, I mean, from minutes 6 until 2, you don't have a ton of hockey subs. I mean, you have people, you know, pretty much rolling for a minute or 90 seconds at a time between ball stoppages. I mean, you don't see a ton of timeouts being taken.
In that case, you'll see Nance get a lot of run with the rollover. Of putting starters back in and yada, yada, yada.
Here's what I would say is that the fact that the Bucks have Brooke Lopez is like one of the best matchups for Nurkic. And so that actually works probably better with the Bucks than with some teams than say like an Anthony Davis. But my point is, I'm curious if the Blazers, if a big ball lineup that included Nurkic, Nance, and Covington could actually create some advantages, because the NBA has gone so small, gone so versatile. Is it now time to go the other way? And actually it's the advantage to have a giant lineup. The Blazers could roll something like that out. It would be interesting to see. So
that big ball lineup that you speak of, in this case, you get a lot of defense, and I don't think you're necessarily sacrificing a lot of offense with who those other two players that you could plug and play in. Dame, CJ, Dame, Norm, those kind of things. Fair enough. Yeah, you know, they're all offensively capable, and it's not like, hey, you know, like, for lack of a better term, on the flip side, a mellow situation where you're getting all offense and you're just going to get a sieve on defense kind of thing. You know, you can keep a decent lineup in there for a while. Yeah. But anyways, so my turn for number 5. I guess if you want to get up there and rep your jersey right now, I will introduce one Mr. CJ McCollum.
Yeah, I feel I'm doing this kind of with a sad face that he's 5th on your list.
Quick question. Who's the player that we want to trade the most? And who's the player that we have said, if you can re-sign this guy and get him to come back to the team, you can finally trade this player? So
who's the guy that's going to potentially get us a star adjacent player in return? Oh, I'm sorry. It's CJ McCollum. Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
There's no one else that can do it. Literally no one else on the Blazers that can do it besides Dame. So
I don't think CJ could do it by himself either.
Well, no, you'd have to sweeten it a little bit. And I said star adjacent because CJ is...
That's a cop-out.
CJ is rather overpaid for his production, but
rather, that's a nice way to put it.
But the NBA with its maximum contracts, this is sort of like, Dame and CJ making, within 25% of each other. Dame has more than 25% greater impact than CJ, but that's just, we have a salary cap. That's how it works. Some players you get these insane bargain values on max deals, right? That they should be worth $100 million a year.
Dame makes a super max. That's $35 or 35% of the salary cap. CJ makes a max contract. That's 25% of the salary cap. So.
Right. I'm just saying, like, he is overpaid, but it's not ridiculously so. I mean, there are some players who are much more overpaid than CJ.
For me, a big thing boils down to that CJ he can get a bucket. He's also a one-trick pony,
which happens to be important in the NBA in 2021 is scoring points. Right.
This is also a thing. And I know a lot of people would like to chime in and be like, oh, well, this makes sense because CJ is horrific on defense. Dame was worse than CJ on defense for the last 2 years. Just going to throw that out there into the ether. Let that be known. Go ahead, look up the statistics, or as Twitter likes to say nowadays, just do your research. But for me, I can definitely not rank CJ higher than I can Norman Powell when I have looked at this entire offseason of saying that if we sign Norman Powell, he is a solid fill-in and replacement for CJ McCollum. So how I base CJ at 5 is I had to figure out where I wanted to place Norman Powell and then immediately place CJ one rung below him.
But that doesn't make any sense because part of that logic is because the Blazers' best player happens to be Damian Lillard. Mm-hmm. History has shown if you have a guard who's defensively somewhat deficient, you need to surround him with all sorts of defensive players. If both of your perimeter defenders are sieves on defense, that's a problem.
Correct. That's why CJ's at number 5. Norm's not a sieve on defense.
CJ happens to also be best at the things that Damian Lillard is best at, i.e. getting a bucket offense. That skill is very valuable for a lot of different teams, including
just
Philadelphia
not the Blazers.
76ers.
Just not the Blazers. And I'm ranking him on the Blazers roster. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, go ahead.
You are incorporating their importance in a potential trade as part of this too, right? And CJ McCollum is going to get you your best return of anybody on the team by far who's not named Dame. There's no question about that. Doesn't matter if he's slightly.
But I'm just saying my justification is that if Norman Powell was a good CJ McCollum replacement, I had to place CJ McCollum directly below Norman Powell. And I picked Norman Powell. Again,
the logic doesn't follow. The logic doesn't. Norm is not as impactful. It
follows in my batshit crazy head. So that's all that matters.
Where I will give you credit is that what you're not doing, you're not ranking this based on who is like the best player. You're saying most impactful, most important. Yeah. I understand that distinction. I think you get a little bit more leeway with that. I think you're taking an inch of rope and you're stretching it out 4 miles. This is not a bungee cord. This is a rope, not a bungee cord, not a rubber band. It's a rope. You can't stretch it that far without it breaking. I think your logic is broken. How dare you? Fans, get in his mentions at the Witty Ryan on Twitter. Make fun of him. This is a terrible take. I hate it. Skip Bayless. That's who you are now.
That's fine. All right. Now we've moved past that. So let's see. Number 6 for you.
With the 6th pick in the preseason roster rankings, I pick Robert Covington, maybe a little bit low.
Yep, we've spoken about it.
We've spoken
about him. So for me, I have one Mr. Larry Nance Jr.
I think that's fair. We've spoken about him too.
Moving on to number 7, Brandon.
This is where it got a little more difficult for me. And I also, there is some level of, availability due to injury or potential development that will impact all of these rankings a little bit. I think that the one person who has the potential to kind of bump up this list, if they've really taken a step, and who I have at number 7 is Anthony Simons. So
I was ready to give you a clap and then we just lost it.
We lost the thread. Anthony Simons is an incredibly mechanically sound shooter. And his numbers are beginning to follow that.
Statistically, I think the best catch and shoot 3-point shooter of the league
numbers
last
are
year.
Beginning to follow that. Right. That's what I'm saying is like, his mechanics have always been pretty unreal. They're getting even tighter, and the numbers are now following that. His body's starting to fill out. You saw him last year. He played meaningful minutes in a rotation that needed what he brought. You look at him now, he's been working out with Dame's trainer, who now took a job with the Sixers, which is a pretty thirsty move by the Sixers. You're not getting Dame. Haha, too bad.
It's a consulting gig. He can still train Dame.
Fair enough. I think that Anthony Simons, if he is able to take a step with his passing and his vision, is specifically with his passing, will open up so much of his game. Anthony Simons, I could see him as a low-level all-star player the same way I see CJ McCollum. I think that is his potential ceiling, and he may not reach that on this team.
You had me until that statement.
I think it's completely possible. I mean, look at that. Look at how CJ developed. I mean, you look at CJ's first 2 years. Did anyone see an all-star there? Not really. Not until the Memphis series where he really balled out. And you're like, wow, look at that. But Anthony Simons is also how many years younger than CJ at this point in his career? A solid 4 years younger than CJ was at this point in his career.
Ooh, I think more than that, because remember, he came out of IMG, so he was drafted at 18, 19.
And CJ McCollum was 22 because he did 4 years of college, right?
Yeah, so CJ's
I think
30,
4 years.
CJ's 30 this year. Anthony Simons is currently, as of June this year, 22. So 8-year difference.
No, at this point in his career. So in CJ's third year, he was 24. And in Anthony's third year, he was 21. So it's like 3.5 years difference. The point is, he's still 21. What? He's
22. I just did that.
He has room to develop, is my point. CJ McCollum was 22 when he was drafted into the league. He didn't break out until he was 24. So my point is that Anthony Simons, he could very easily be higher on this list. If he develops, there's an extra click there. His body develops a little bit more. His passing develops a little bit more. He could easily be more impactful than 7, but that's where I put him.
Okay. I'll allow it. I agree with most of what you said. My biggest thing with him is that I just don't think he's a point guard. And until the Blazers start playing him as a backup shooting guard, primarily, it's a hard sell for me. For me,
who's playing backup shooting guard if not him?
Wow. We'll get to those guys later. But they remember Neil O'Shea famously said, "We have a backup point guard. His name is Anthony Simons."
Well, Neil O'Shea can, whatever. But that doesn't mean you have to play him that way. Doesn't mean Billups is going to want to play him that way.
Yeah. So for me, my number 7 is Cody Zeller. That's where he enters the list. Our first backup center, our first backup big. Biggest thing hanging over his head is that he actually does have injury concerns. Granted, he's been a starter most of his career, but he kind of falls into that Larry Nance Jr. kind of thing of that he's not great at anything, but he's good at stuff. And that's
he's good at stuff. He is good at stuff.
Yeah. He's good at basketball, I hear, but he's great at representing the bald white guy team. So that gets bonus points for me.
He is NBA all insurance salesman lookalike for sure. Him, Alex Caruso, and a handful of others.
Oh my God, are they opening up a State Farm and AmFam? Which what do you think? It's not a Geico or whatnot, but yeah, no. So
American family,
as long as he can stay healthy. But the big thing with him, again, I trust the Blazers training staff. I trust the Blazers health and conditioning staff. Always will from this point in time until they prove me wrong otherwise. But he's not going to be playing as many minutes per se. I think he's averaged about 28 minutes a game so far in his career with Charlotte. The one wrinkle,
fewer than that.
Fewer? 22?
Yeah.
22?
22.7 technically, but
Okay, so we'll round that up 23. And when you're looking at Nurk playing about like 25 minutes a night, which is about where he averages, you got to come up with a couple minutes here and there. I guess that's where Larry Nance Jr. comes in for playing small ball lineups. Robert Covington can also slide over, play that 5. So it's you're splitting center duties with one of the more important positions for the Blazers, as I've outlined, with Yusuf Nurkic being number 2 on this. But Cody Zeller, as long as he can stay healthy, the things he can do, he's a solid screen setter. So this is now fantastic because we have 2 centers who can set great screens. I'm putting him at number 7.
That's fair. Cody Zeller is a very, like you said, solid. He's a replacement level player. He's competent. Yeah. He knows where to be and knows what to do and how to do it. He's kind of like a Mason Plumlee-ish in that way, where it's just like he's just sort of he's there and things are not falling apart when he's there. And he's not being asked to start. He can start in a pinch, which is also helpful. So
you lose like if you're going to compare it to Cantor from last year, like you obviously lose stuff on the offensive end, but this is kind of like that whole addition by subtraction of like, hey, take away, maybe 2 or 3 rebounds a game and 6 points, but he's actually getting stops. He's getting blocks. He's not absolutely getting destroyed on the opposite end of the court, so you're keeping points off the board on the other end. So that's how I feel about Zeller. All right.
That's fair.
Number 8.
Number 8 is where I had Cody Zeller. So for all the reasons we just talked about, I think he's going to be in the Blazers kind of, truncated rotation off the bench. Hopefully he doesn't get injured. He'll be there as an injury replacement. If someone else gets injured, he's a solid player, replacement level, totally fine.
All right. Number 8 for me. Hey, as the rule creator, here's where I throw a wrinkle in.
Okay.
My number 8 spot is the Mr. Open roster spot. My list is going 14 deep. I am throwing this wrinkle.
Get a load of this guy. Get a load of this guy over here. He's putting CJ at spot number 5. He's putting open roster spot at number 8. I'm wondering where cash considerations is going to slide into here.
Cash considerations is not on the list because we do not have cash considerations, but the open roster spot. And the open roster spot. This is going to be my little prayer. Please, Blazers, get your head out of your ass and find a competent backup veteran point guard that you can sign to a vet minimum to fill out the minimum 14 roster spots you are supposed to fill out of the league. We don't need any more tall people. We can switch things up enough, but what I want to see is less of Dame and CJ, the possibility of them having to stagger and get a legit backup point guard. So for me, that is the reason, that is the hope that number 8 is open roster spot.
2 words for you. Isaiah Thomas.
I mean, we can't claim that Dame and CJ are short anymore because you've just brought in somebody shorter, but I'm not opposed to it. Bring him back. I don't care.
Yeah, I think, honestly,
give me a legit backup point guard and I am fucking happy. And that is him. Number 8.
Former second team All-NBA, 2-time All-Star, almost led the league in scoring.
I'll even take Jared Bayless back. What the hell's he doing now? I'm not picky.
I'll play. I think
is Mike Richmond the pass first point guard? Is he
let's get Mike in there. I think the latest available reporting before the Nance trade, I think it came from Jason Quick, is that the Blazers were planning. Well, wait until I say what I was going to say. The Blazers were going to bring in one more player to fill that roster spot at some point. Now that the small forward spot in backup center has been spoken for, I think it's now less likely that LaMarcus Aldridge comes home, although I still would like to see that, frankly. I find it more likely that they will bring in a backup guard. And I actually, at this point, why not Isaiah Thomas?
And not backup guard. You have to clarify. We have enough actual backup point guards.
Guard. Isaiah Thomas was a point guard. He wasn't like the best passer in the world, but he's done it. He knows he can run an offense.
He's capable. He can
run an offense.
He can eat 8 to 12 minutes a night. That's all I want.
Well,
that's all I want.
So fine.
So that's my number 8.
Can we change it to Isaiah Thomas instead of open roster spot? No, that's fine. All right.
No, I'm keeping it labeled as open roster spot, but we can just say, that's going to be Isaiah Thomas. All right.
I would like to note that we're now at an hour 15 and that's fine. We're in the part of the list where it tends to go quick. Great. Let's go. Number 9
to you.
Number 9. Number nine. Sorry. Shout out Beatles reference, Tony Snell. Tony Snell's number 9. You're getting kind of at the bottom of the barrel here. You're getting past the point where you're really, really solid on what your tight playoff rotation is going to be. I like to think of a playoff rotation as 8 deep when the games really, really matter. You may even only play 7 players. 8 deep is kind of where it hits for me. And by the way, just to say, I'm going to give Neil Olshey polite clap. I think he's done all right this offseason. The Blazers are now.
I had to look. The skies seem to be falling.
No, the Blazers, they have 8 competent, decent NBA players. They don't have any major gaping holes, save for the backup point guard. Again, I think with Dame and CJ potentially staggering again, Anthony Simons, fine. But
if anybody wants load management, you don't want to see them staggered.
My point is that that's not like a 5-alarm fire type of thing. That's like, something smoldering over there. Maybe we should go put it out at some point. I don't think it's like the biggest deal in the world. The point is that the Blazers can go 8 deep pretty easily. Once you get to 9, it gets weird. Tony Snell, I don't know how much he has left. Blazers got him on a minimum. He might be useful. He might be useful to sop up minutes if they need an injury replacement. The thing I remember him most for is that one graphic where it was like Tony Snell, 28 minutes, 0 points, 0 field goals, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals.
He can do worse than that on the Blazers. I have faith in that.
We call that the sextuple 0. He put up that sextuple 0, rivaled only by the triple single, which is one of the funniest.
That was great.
That was one of the funniest things. Is that Shaq talking to Charles Barkley? I love that. Anyway, Tony Snell for me. Who do you got at 9?
All right, for me, 9. We've spoken about him already. Both gave our opinions. That is where I have Anthony Simons.
That's fine. I think it's
he would have been my number 8. So right below where you had him, but I have open roster spot. So I got to give it to open roster spot.
We're trying to hurry up now. I don't see how you could say if your open roster spot is a backup point guard, Anthony Simons is demonstrably better than any backup point guard they're going to get.
Nope, because
and he might develop more. He probably will develop more. So that seems kind of weird to me.
I just think that having a legit vet backup point guard is significantly more important than having the third year developing shooting guard as I view him. So.
Yeah, but he's already pretty good. By the way, 4th year, not 3rd. He's already pretty good. I mean, like you said earlier, he's shooting 43% from deep on 4.5 attempts. That's not nothing.
Got one skill right now. Show me that he can do more, and I'll move him up the list.
I think he definitely could do more.
Moving on.
Number 10.
Number 10 to you.
Big Ben McLemore.
Wow. Actually, now I am starting to get surprised, and I'm wondering if you left somebody off your list.
Maybe I did. I'm looking again. Look. Anyway, Ben McLemore, again, we're at the point now where I'm not certain these players are going to get a ton of run or a ton of impact. Actually, no, there's one more player that coming up on my next slot that maybe is who you're thinking of. But, Ben McLemore, he's an NBA veteran. He has some skill. He's not totally incompetent. He can stop up minutes if need be. That's what I had there.
All right. For me, number 10, Nasir Little. I expect a breakout year from him. I don't know, if he's injury prone or whatnot. He's gone through a lot of weird shit so far with his COVID stuff, his random fainting spells, all this stuff.
I think that was due to COVID though. He had syncope, which is a fainting spell.
Okay.
That was due to having COVID.
Okay. I wasn't sure if those things were related, but he's gone through a lot of random stuff. And
he had long COVID too. Like he said, it was affecting him for months and months.
He had long haul. So I'm hoping that he gets a decent amount of run in the second unit this year. I'm not expecting a lot, but he has also shown that when he came into the league and when he was drafted, he didn't have a 3-point shot. He couldn't create on his own. And then he worked with the Blazers development staff. And we saw during the minutes that he got that he was able to actually develop a 3-point shot, start creating off the dribble, a little more handles, all those kind of things. So this is another year in the league, another year of development development. I'm just hoping for not a monstrative step up. I'm not one of those people who are like, he needs to be the backup 2, call it now, or, hey, he could even start in the league. I'm not one of those crazy people. Just give me a little bit step up, a little bit more improvement. I've liked what I've seen so far, and I expect to see that similar growth curve continue.
That's fair. I'll parrot a lot of what you said. I put him at 11. I'm not as high on him. I don't have as much faith he's going to develop. And even if he does, I'm not sure what need is he filling on this team, absent several people getting injured. I see it much more someone like Anthony Simons, his current talent plus development, serving a much more important need than anything Nasir Little has done, plus whatever development he may go through. But would love to be wrong about this, but I have Nas Little at 11. All
right. So you're number 12?
So this is where I'm a little confused about who the last 2 players we're working with are, because I don't know if either of these 2 are going to be on the team. But 12 is Rondé Hollis Jefferson.
Not on the team, not an option.
Okay, wait, who do you have at 11 real quick?
All right, here. I'm just going to finish off my list because not much needs to be said about these 3.
That's fine.
So
11?
11 for me, Tony Snell.
Okay.
12 for me, Ben McLemore.
Okay.
13 for me, again, keeping in mind that I said open roster spot. 13 for me, CJ Ellaby. And last on my list, Greg Brown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, this is way out of date. Okay, good call. So I will sub out Rondé and put in Greg Brown. So I have Greg Brown at 12 then in that case.
Okay.
And then I'll have CJ Ellaby at 13 and then 14.
By the way, 2 quick seconds. I got a dog barking in the background. You talk. We're working out. Hold on.
Okay. To round out my list, I guess he went 14 with open roster spot. My God. Fine. I'll put open roster spot at 14. I'm interested in Greg Brown. I mean, he looked good during Summer League. We talked about it, Ryan and I did. He looked like he belonged there, which is important. Don't think he's going to be contributing this year. If he does, I think it's more likely something went off the rails than it is that he had some amazing development year. And then CJ Ellaby at 13, I don't think he's an NBA player. I don't even think the potential is there, unfortunately for him. I may even put, that's fine. I just don't agree with putting open roster spot above an actual human being, but I might, Ryan, I was just saying, if I were that cruel, I might put open roster spot above CJ Ellaby at 13. But so my 11, 12, 13, 14, then I forgot about Ellaby and Brown are Nas Little, Greg Brown, Ellaby, and then open roster spot. So, and your 11, 12, 13, 14 were Snell, McLemore, CJ Ellaby, and who was 14? Greg Brown?
Greg Brown.
Okay. So, and we don't expect those people to contribute. And so that concludes our preseason roster rankings. I was right. You're wrong. Make fun of Ryan.
That's fine. Isn't that game fun? See, isn't that a lot better than doing a grade the trade, grade the offseason? There's a lot more debate and nuance into it. You get legitimately call each other stupid.
That was legitimately way more fun than I expected. So good job. I'm glad I listened to you on that.
All right.
No regrets there.
On that note, we're wrapping up. We're not going to have anything we'll fall back here on our normal recording schedule in about 2 weeks, I believe. This upcoming normal recording day, we are both out of town. And so we'll be back then. In the meantime, you can go ahead and follow Goldner at Goldner PDX on Twitter. You can follow me at the Witty Ryan. You can follow us at Like the Blazers on Twitter.
Oh, he's doing it. How cute.
Do we have an email? Is it weliketheblazers@gmail.com?
It is indeed.
All right, then you can go ahead and shoot us an email there and tell us how stupid we are and how wrong I am for having CJ at number 5 on my preseason roster rankings. Also, top of the show, we had said, what do you like hearing out of your podcast? Do you like our banter more than guests, or do you want smarter people than us to take up more of this airspace? Until next time, Goldner.
Witty, can I say one epilogue thing?
No.
By the way, that was an excellent ending.
That was great, and you effing ruined it.
Well, wait. One quick thing, though. We might have to have an emergency podcast if I don't think we mentioned Ben Simmons during this whole time. Just to say,
Oh, yeah, that's right. That Daryl Morey overplayed his hand.
He totally did. And just really quick, the reporting is now coming out that Ben Simmons is not going to report to the Philadelphia 76ers training camp. We don't have time to talk about it now. But what does that mean? That means that Daryl Morey is waiting for a Dame trade. Ain't going to happen now. And I think that CJ McCollum is probably the best they're going to get for him. So we'll table that. Now, if Simmons gets traded for CJ...
No,
emergency pod if CJ gets traded. Yes,
correct. Emergency pod if CJ gets traded. Last little bit about the Ben Simmons. The Minnesota Timberwolves can offer an amazing package, and I feel as that is the ultimate fuck you to Ben Simmons, with him saying, "I want to go to an LA team," in which he would get traded to a city that goes, "Hey, we used to be one of those."
Yeah. Wow. I and also this twist about Simmons said apparently he doesn't want to play in Portland. But anyway, fascinating to see how that works out. Take us out of here again real quick, or just, I don't know. You did such a great job. I felt bad, but we didn't get to it.
It's, you know what?
Okay.
Hey,
then we're done.
Click. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Peace out.